Welcome to AASHTOWare Pavement ME Design, Fiscal Year 24, webinar number 4 on using libraries in the PMED web application. I am Hari Nair, the chair of the Payment ME Task Force, and I will be your moderator for today's presentation. Today's presenter will be Mr. Chad Becker of Applied Research Associates. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on the Payment ME resource website. Again, I'm the chair of the ME Task Force, and Ian Drish of the Georgia DOT is the vice chair. Other members of the task force are Ryan Fragapane, is an AASHTOWare Product Director, Ben Said, AASHTOWare Associate Product Manager, Patrick Burl with Ohio DOT, Nusrat Morshed with the New Jersey DOT, Kumar Dave with the Indiana DOT, Delsey Feldman from California DOT, Jason Simmons, Utah DOT, Susan Chan, Ontario Ministry of Transportation, and Tom Yu, Federal Highway License. We encourage you to ask questions, and those will be addressed at the end of today's webinar. If you have questions, please click on the QA button to send your questions to the host and panelists, and we will address this in the QA session directly after the presentation as time permits. Any questions not answered will be responded to separately. Now, Ben will go through the housekeeping items.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. There's an option at the bottom called Q&A. You're able to submit your questions there. Some of them will be answered directly through the Q&A function. You're able to get answers right away. If your question doesn't get answered right away, it's because one of us wants to answer it live at the end if time permits. So if you haven't seen your answer yet, just hold tight to the end and we'll get to it then. Thanks.
Okay, Ben should start the poll questions 1, 2, and 3. You'll have about a minute to answer these questions.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Hari. All right, let's get started. So thanks everyone for coming to the webinar today. We're going to go over the XML and library data concepts that exist in the Pavement ME Design web application. This is the 4th webinar in our series on AASHTOWare Pavement ME Design. So we're going to be discussing how to create and use libraries in the web application. And this is just an outline slide that goes over the various things that we're going to be talking about in the webinar today. Okay, so basically libraries in Pavement ME Design. The libraries are essential for setting up an agency's unique data for use in their designs. So libraries include all the design's components, such as materials and traffic, calibration, design properties, climate, and more, as well as the entire design itself. So we're going to focus on how to create and organize your PMED library data to help prepare your agency for using that in the web application. So just some learning outcomes. At the end of the webinar, we want participants to be able to recognize different types of PMED component XML data as libraries, understand the difference and interactions between libraries, workspaces, and users in the PMED web service, how to set up workspaces and associate them with libraries and users, how to use library data in your designs, how to organize your XML data within libraries via composite libraries and design templates, how to import XML data and review it in the PMED web app, and how to successfully transition your library data from the desktop application into the web application. Okay, so just before we get going, let's talk about some terminology. So PMED data are stored in a single XML file called the Design Guide Program XML file. That's the abbreviation that we see for the DGPX file, Design Guide Program XML file. We'll usually refer to that simply as designs or design files. I want to mention and emphasize the difference between these designs and the web application. They exist transiently in the system in the web application, as opposed to libraries, which are permanent in the system. So the PMED web app can be thought of as a calculator. You put in your engineering numbers, and it spits out a report's worth of data as answers. Now, that's obviously an oversimplification of that process, but it highlights the point of the ephemeral nature of the designs in the system. The design data is provided to the app, it gets consumed in the analysis, and the results are provided for download, at which point the design is no longer needed by the web app and it gets discarded. All that's temporary, that's all ephemeral information. Of course, you do want to keep your design data around. That's just not allowed to occur on the PMED production server. So agencies are responsible for maintaining their design data internally, just as they are for the desktop application. And that allows the PMED app to do what it does best, which is the analysis of the data. However, we know that agencies do have libraries and templates of data that you want to keep in the system because it makes it easier to work with. And so those things represent an agency's pavement design rules and engineering decisions over time. And they're the data that your agency will want to use in other designs over and over again. So we use several terms to describe interactions with library data. And so we're gonna define some of those now. Okay, so here's some library terminology. We have save, load, import, export, associate, and delete. So save is an operation which writes the current state of a library to the production database. Load is an operation which takes data from the database and puts it into the current session state. Import is an operation which takes a file from your system and puts it into the current session state. Export takes data from system memory and writes it to your file system. Associate creates a link relationship, typically a sibling relationship, between two objects. And delete removes a relationship between two objects, or it removes an object from the system entirely. We're also going to see some terminology related to upload and download. And those terms are synonymous with import and export for libraries. We're going to be going back through some of this terminology in some of our FY25 enhancements and unifying that into a single set of terminology with discrete meaning. So that way, all of this means the same thing for both libraries and for designs. Okay, so what comprises a Pavement ME Design library data? PMED library data essentially breaks apart the DGPX file into the following components: performance criteria, traffic, climate, structure, materials, design properties, calibration, and design templates. Each of those components can be represented in the system by a single XML file. Some of those component systems can be further broken down into even more granular data. Traffic is an example with axle load configuration and others. We're not going to review those subcomponents in any detail, as the ones that we're most concerned with as potential libraries in the PMED system are the ones that I've just mentioned. So each of these components can be saved and loaded into designs in the app. Additionally, the PMED web application allows agencies to save entire designs as templates. And when a design is created, users will have the option to select a design template for their default data rather than the system default data. And we're going to take a look at a demo of that later. Okay, so preparing a tenant for library data. To use libraries in the PMED app, first you'll need to be a tenant admin. Most folks that use the system are tenant admins, but not all. So if you're not a tenant admin, you won't have access to the tenants and workspaces in your within your tenant, and you'll just need to talk to your tenant admin to get things set up. To use libraries in the app, you'll first need to set up one or more workspaces. So recall from previous webinars that workspaces represent groupings of library data, user accounts, and user interface configuration properties. So PMED ships with a non-configurable workspace called the system workspace. And that workspace is where all the default data, the default design data is pulled when a new design is created and when a design strategy within a design is selected or changed. Okay, so the following slides are going to contain several demos. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to describe in detail the operations that I'm going to perform, and then I'm going to demonstrate them in the app live. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our own workspace in our tenant. This workspace is going to be used, in our case, to demonstrate various library components, so I'm just going to call it Sandbox 1. Your agency should really carefully consider the naming of your workspaces. The name should help communicate their purposes. An example might be creating a workspace for a particular region, perhaps related to material data in that region, or for different districts at your agency. So we're going to see the new Pavement ME Design homepage shortly. I've already signed into the app, and then we're going to click on tenants. And most users will see a single tenant, but your user account might belong to multiple tenants, in which case you'll see them listed in the tenants view component. Select the tenant. We're going to select the tenant where we want to create a workspace. And for our demo, it's going to be called PMED test tenant. And the workspace component will then be loaded by default from the tenant action menu items. Let me show you what that looks like here. So this is the new integrated Pavement ME Design website. I've actually already signed in, cbeckerdarea.com at the top. I'm going to go to tenants, and you can see my tenants listed here. Again, sometimes you'll have multiple tenants if you belong to multiple tenants. Those will be listed here. So you just want to select the one that you'd like to manage. We're going to select PMED test tenant. And then we're going to select the first selection that comes up is workspace, and we want to add a new workspace. So we're going to click the add new button, and we're going to give it a name, Sandbox-1, create, and you can see that's created my new workspace. And there's some information here. Get down to that. So we're going to we've created the new Sandbox-1 using the add new button. So now we can see its name, its description, whether it is set to the default and or active workspace for the currently logged in user account, the number of users associated with the workspace. That's going to be 0 when the first time that you create it. The unit system the workspace should utilize by default, and whether to generate structural response files as part of a design output. So we can see all that here. We're going to select the workspace we just created so that we can add some users to it. So we're going to click on Sandbox-1 to open the workspace settings component. From there, we'll see report customization, edit users, and edit libraries. So let me click on this. So here we see report customization. This is actually going to be moved from here to the design editor soon. We can see edit users and edit libraries. And right now we're concerned with users, so we're going to click on edit users. We haven't created any libraries yet, so we can't add any libraries to the workspace yet. There are 2 ways to add libraries to a workspace. One is using the workspace editor component and this edit libraries button. You just click the add library association. You can see we don't have any right now, but this is where it would show up. The second way is to use the library editor component, which we're going to review here in just a minute. So let's add a user to our workspace. So we're going to click on Add User Association, and we're going to get a list of users that are associated with the tenant, and that'll show up in a dialog. And then we'll just click the Add button to add them to the workspace, and then we'll click Close. So we've gone to tenants, we selected our tenant, the workspace popped up, clicked on Edit Users. Now we want to add a user association. So I'm going to go ahead and add myself to the workspace. And that's it. So now this user is associated with this workspace. Okay, just as a note, you can also remove users from a workspace from this screen. So next, we're going to click the Back to Workspace button. And we can now see that a single user account is associated with the workspace here. So let's see here. So the workspace is set up, it's ready to be used. We've associated a user account. Now what we need to do is we need to set our current session to this workspace. So our current session is set up to be in the system workspace by default. We need to change that over. So we're gonna leave the workspace editor. We're gonna click on selected workspace, and you can see the default workspace is set to system workspace, and the current session workspace also set to system workspace. So what we're going to do is we're going to set that to sandbox 1. So we'll grab it from the drop-down box, and I'm going to set that as my default workspace, and I'm going to set it as the current session workspace. So now the system knows that I'm working in the sandbox 1 workspace. Note that after you first create the workspace, it may not immediately be present in this drop-down list. There's a small bug there in the UI. Just click on the No Workspace and then reopen the combo box, and it should refresh, and you should see your workspace appear there. So the workspace at this point is now ready to be used. In the next part of the webinar, we're going to create a few different types of libraries, and we're going to associate them with this workspace. Back to my presentation view here. Okay, so this demonstration is going to focus on how to create non-material libraries within your workspace. So we're going to navigate back to the tenants. We're going to select our tenant. We're going to click on Default Libraries. The Default Libraries component is comprised of 2 tables. Let me bring this up as we go. So we're going to go to Tenants. We're going to go to our tenant. We're going to go to Default Libraries. And you can see we don't have anything under all libraries. We don't have anything under material libraries. So those are the 2 tables. The first table is for all non-material component data. The second is specifically for materials. So we're going to examine the non-material library options first. Our list of library options start empty. We're going to click the Add New button to add a new library. We're going to provide the new library with a name and select the appropriate unit system for the library. Typically, the name of the library should reflect its general purpose. And then we'll be able to provide a description for the library after it's been created. We're going to create a new traffic library. So we're going to call it Traffic 1. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So within all libraries, I'm going to click on Add New. We're going to give this the name Traffic-1. It's going to be US customary. Create. So now we see Traffic 1 appear in our list of libraries. Next to the library navigation button, there's an edit pen. So this is the library navigation button. Here's the edit pen. The edit pen lets you change the name of the library. And then clicking on Traffic 1 will take us into the library editor component. Additionally, we see an analysis type field. That's going to populate if there is an analysis type that's been selected. We'll get into more how that works here in just a little bit. We see an available modules field, which describes what modules are available in the library. So a library can be a single library, just for traffic, or it can be what we call a composite library that we're going to talk about in a minute that contains multiple modules. And then we also see a unit system field, which tells the user what unit system the library is using, as well as an associated workspaces field, and that'll default to be 0. The final icon, which is a trash can icon, that's going to allow you to delete the library. Just be careful when you're doing that. If you delete a library, it's just gone. There's no recovering it. We do provide a second dialog that pops up when you hit the delete button. It's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? Because it cannot be reversed. So if you hit confirm remove, it'll delete it. I keep it, so we're going to hit cancel. Okay, so note that if we have existing PMED compatible XML files for this component, this traffic component, it is possible to upload that file to the library at this step. And we're going to go over that a little later in the webinar after we've set up some initial libraries. So we're going to look at editing library data in just a minute. But first, we have some more libraries to create. So we're going to look at creating a composite library and design templates next. Okay, composite libraries. Oop, switching back. Yeah, okay. 1 second. Bring the web app back up. There we go. Composite libraries are simply libraries that are comprised of more than one of these modules or design components. For example, this might be something like traffic and calibration factors. Together, these two component libraries would form what we call a composite library. There's not a semantic distinction between composite libraries and libraries within the app. They're all just simply referred to as libraries. So let's go over an example of how to create and use a composite library comprised of traffic and calibration data. Since we already have a traffic library created, we can just extend that library to include calibration factor defaults we want our users to be able to load into their designs. So in this manner, you can build up a set of libraries into a composite library from which your designers can pull common data. If you're going to use most or all of a design's components, that is all of these little buttons here, for a given library, then it might be a good idea to create a design template instead. We're going to show that workflow here in just a little bit. So we're here under tenants, all libraries, and we have our traffic 1 library here. I'm going to go ahead and enter the traffic 1 library. I am not going to change the data just yet. We're going to go over data modifications in a second. All we're going to do right now is we're going to hit the save button. Okay, so the app is going to prompt us at this point to say, okay, you want to save this library. And the key thing to note here, let me cancel out of this really quick. Key thing to note here is that when you're inside of a library in Pavement ME Design, you are working with what is sort of a temporary in-memory design file. It's the entire design file. This is just the easiest way for you, the users, to access the various components that comprise the design file. So you can get in here and you can change things. You can set the design type and the pavement type for this library. When you hit save, the program's going to ask you, okay, you've made changes to this temporary design. We know that you're in the library editor component, so we know you want to create a set or a composite of library data. And so it's just going to ask you, what do you want to save that you've changed as libraries so that you can use those later in your designs. So right now we're just going to set this up as a traffic library, and I'm going to eventually change the AADTT to 1000. So we'll put that there. I'm also going to save calibration. I'm going to change bottom up AC fatigue cracking. I think it's C1. So I'll check that box as well. And I'm going to hit save. And we get a little prompt down here. It says changes saved successfully. So now what we have is this composite library. And we know that it is a composite library because when we go back to library management, we can see that the calibration and the traffic modules are now available. When we're in the libraries editor, we see this list, and this is a filter. And so if I click on performance criteria, we see I don't have any performance criteria libraries, but if I click on traffic, I do have a traffic library. Now it also has calibration data in it. That means it's going to show up here also under the calibration library. Well, when we get into the design editor, after we've edited some of the library data, it'll become apparent how those libraries tie into bringing the data into your designs. So we've changed this from just being traffic to also including calibration. So might want to consider giving this a better name than traffic 1. So we're going to edit this and call it traffic-calibration data. And so we've changed the name of this library to reflect its usage. Okay, so next we're going to look at creating a full design template, and then we're going to go through data editing and how to tie this back into a design. So design templates are meant to be used when a full design specification, say from an agency's design catalog or agency policies, prescribes exactly how to design a particular pavement. The idea of the template is that you set up all of the important parameters at once, and then your agency users will always have access to that template for that particular design strategy, and they're guaranteed to have the correct inputs prior to making any adjustments. So we'll walk through this in a short demo. So first, we're going to click the back to library management, which actually gets us here. And so we do note this still has the 2 available modules. We've edited the name. So now we want to back to design templates. Sorry, I'm following along in my demo notes. Okay, so we're going to create a new library, clicking on the Add New button in the All Libraries component, because that's where the design templates are. So we're going to click Add New here. And we're going to call this Design Template Flexible 1, because we're going to make a flexible design template. So we'll hit Create. And we can see our new library has been created here. So far, everything's identical to the process we performed with the creation of the other 2 libraries, calibration and traffic. However, the way we use design templates in the design creation process is a little bit different than for other libraries. We're going to demonstrate that when we get into the design editor. Another difference for design templates is that you cannot upload a DGPX XML file as a design template. You can do that for all the other component libraries, but not for full DGPX files. This process, being able to get if you have a DGPX file and you want to use it as a design template, you're going to go to the design editor, and then there's a way to actually just save that as a library. We're going to look at that in just a minute as well. Speaking of the design editor, we're almost ready to see our libraries in action. There are a few things to do before we go. We need to create a material library, and each library that we created will need to be associated with a workspace. We should also edit some of the data in each library so we can see the changes coming into our designs when we get into the design editor. So I'm going to do that really quick here. Let me switch back to the presentation. This. Okay, and so first we'll go through the material library creation. So to create a material library, we're going to click Add New under the Material Libraries table. That's going to launch a dialog that walks us through the creation of a new material library. We're going to give the new library a meaningful name, as we did previously. We're going to call this one New Flexible 1, ensure the unit system is correct, and then select which type of material we plan on using for this library. So we're going to go Add New. Actually going to change the name of this one. Call this Asphalt 1. It's US. And we're going to make it out of asphalt. So as soon as we click that, it's created the library, and it's taken us directly into the library for editing. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this because we're going to have to come back. I'm going to change this air voids percentage to 5. I'm going to hit Save. So that saved those changes successfully. Now we're going to look at how we associate these libraries with the workspace. So previously, we said my user account, cbecker@aara.com. That account has access to this Sandbox 1 workspace. We've created some libraries. We have changed data in one of those libraries. We're going to go back real quick and change the data in the other libraries as well. Let me do that first. So we're going to go to our traffic calibration data composite library. And we're going to go to the traffic node. And I'm going to change the AADTT to 1,000. Save it. And it pops up this dialog again. And this is just to confirm, yep, it's still going to be a traffic library. It's still going to be a calibration library. That's the data that we want to save. We can hit save here. We could also go and edit the calibration factors first, then come and hit save. Totally up to you how you want to do that. So let's go to the climate, or excuse me, to the calibration factors. There's a problem. The calibration factors, there's no action menu item for them here. And that's because the calibration factors are dependent solely on the design strategy that's selected. So we need to pick that first. Fortunately, the library system gives us that capability. So we know we have some flexible calibration factors that we want to change. So we're going to select a new flexible pavement. And just like in the design editor, the library editor has now populated with some extra information. So now we can define our calibration and design properties as well as performance criteria. So we're going to go to calibration. I'm going to change this to 1.32, bottom up AC cracking C1, save. And then hit save again. And that has changed, save the changes to this library. Okay, so the next step is going to be associating our designs, our libraries with our workspaces. So let me bring that up now. And we'll just start with the library that we're currently in. I'm going to go, let's see. Yes, so this is the traffic calibration data library. And that has the changes we made to traffic and to the calibration factors. And usually when you create a new library, the first thing that I do is I click the add association button and I add it to my workspace. That way I just don't forget to do it later. So I'm going to hit done. I'm going to purposefully leave out the design template so we can see how to add it from the workspaces. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to library management, and we're going to add in our Asphalt 1 material library. We're going to associate that with our workspace. So we click on add association after entering the library editor. Then we add it to the workspace we want it to be associated with. We hit done. And now our user accounts are associated with the workspace. Our libraries are set up. We've changed the data in those libraries. Now I did that manually. There is an automated process. We're going to look at that in a little bit that allows you to upload existing XML data into the library editor just to make things faster for the user. When you do that, and I'm going to stress this again later, make sure you check all of the library properties. There are, as Pavement ME Design has evolved over the years, the modules that have been enhanced and added, things like top-down cracking, for example, have added new properties to the system. The XML serializer that brings in that data from that XML file into the library, it's going to create those with default values. When I say defaults, I don't mean system defaults. I mean C# defaults. A double or a numeric field will be a 0. That will cause problems if you don't check the field. So make sure after you upload a library, especially if it's from an older version of the application, check all of the fields in that library. Make sure they're correct. Make sure they're accurate. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but we're going to be working in FY25. We're going to be working on a log, an import log, and that log is going to tell you exactly what properties that the system had to change. And so that way you can just go and verify them directly without having to hunt them down manually. And I'll go over that again here in a little bit. Okay, so we have added all of our workspace associations except one. So I'm going to go back to library management. And now I'm going to go back to tenant management because that's going to take me to our workspace. And remember I said I purposely left out the design template library from our workspace because I wanted to show this feature. So we go into the workspace. And so let's say you spent time and you have 20 libraries and you've uploaded them all. You can't remember which ones you've associated with the workspace that you want to associate. You can do that from the workspaces. You just go to the workspace, you go to edit libraries, and then you hit add library association. And you can see here's the one that I missed. It's right here. So we're just going to add it. And that's it. So now our traffic calibration data composite library is associated with this workspace, and our design template flexible one design template library also associated with this workspace. Okay. Make sure I've hit all of the points here. Yes, I think we're good. I want to point out within the libraries, when we did the material library, we weren't given, it took us directly into the editor, and we modified just the voids, the air voids. We're gonna look and see how that interacts with loading it into a design editor in the next part of the webinar. And that's going to function a little bit differently than the design template and the traffic calibration data. Okay, so at this point, we've set up the data that in the libraries we want to use for the demonstration. We've associated them with the workspace. You're going to need to create libraries per your agency's specific needs. So I just want to note that AASHTO and ARA the help desk, we're available to assist you with this process. So as you're going through this, if you have questions, if you run into issues, reach out to us, and we're there to help you. Okay, so let's go to the design editor component now and see what we can do with the libraries that we have created. So we're going to go to designs, and then I need to go back to my presentation and get it updated. Okay, so using libraries in the design editor. Okay, so we're going to click on designs in the navigation menu. We're going to click create new design from the designs component. We're going to give that design a name. We're going to start with our composite library. So we'll call it composite design 1. And then we're going to click create. That'll open up the design. Then we'll open up the design editor component by clicking on the design editor pen icon. We're going to click on the traffic action menu item. We're going to note the value of the AADTT. It's going to be, it's going to be 4,000, which is the system default. We want to load our new traffic library data into this design. So we're going to click on the ellipsis in the lower right corner of the design editor component. We're going to select traffic, import traffic library, and that's going to take us to the library importer component. I'm going to go through this step by step in just a minute. The purpose of this component is to provide users with a way to search through your libraries. That way you can look at the library, make sure the description matches. You can actually click on it. It'll bring up another window that'll show the data. You can't edit the data there. You have to go into the library to do that, but you'll be able to verify that it's the library that you actually want for your design. So let me jump back to the app. So we're going to create a new design. I'm going to call this, I'm not going to call it composite because I don't want people to think it's a composite pavement. So I'm going to call this new flexible one. I won't give it a description. We'll talk about templates here in a minute. So I'm going to hit create. I'm going to use the edit pen. Okay, so here we are in the design. I know I want this to be new flexible, so I'm going to select new pavement, flexible pavement. Okay, so I know that I have a traffic library at my agency that I'm supposed to be using. So I'm going to click on traffic, and we can see the AADTT is 4,000, which is the system default. So I'm going to come down here to this ellipsis. I'm going to click that, mouse over traffic, and I'm going to import a traffic library. Click on that. And we can see here's our traffic library, traffic and calibration data. It sets the AADTT to 1,000. So I'm going to click on that. Indeed, I can see that the two-way AADTT is set to 1,000 in this library. Any of the other tabs, anything that's associated with traffic, all of that can be configured and automatically pulled into your design. So we're going to go ahead and click on confirm import. And we can see that's updated. That's flashed my in-memory design with what would be all of the traffic data. We just changed the two-way AADTT. So how do you use this? Set up your traffic data specific for your agency or your region. You set it up one time. You update it as needed. And then your designers simply come into the system and load those libraries into their designs as they work on them. Same thing for calibration factors. If I come down here to calibration, we can see we have our bottom-up AC cracking C1. It's set to 1.31. We modified that, so we're going to click on the ellipsis. We're going to go to our calibration factors library, and we're going to import AC cracking bottom-up libraries. Click that, and we'll select the library that we've set up. And here's the 1.32. That looks correct, so we're going to hit confirm import. And indeed, that's been updated. Now you can see you have multiple options here. You have import AC cracking bottom up, or you can import all of the flexible calibration factors. So if you've set up a, if you've gone through the calibration process for new flexible and you have all of these calibration factors set for your agency, you can bring them all in at once to the design. Heading off a couple questions. What if I cannot see my library? So if you go to the ellipsis and you go to import and you don't see any libraries, or you don't see the library that you're looking for here, the answer is you probably just forgot to associate it with either the user account or the workspace. So just check the selected workspace here, make sure that you have that set and that it's set to your current session, and then go into your tenant. Make sure that your workspace, ours is Sandbox 1. We're going to click on Edit Libraries. Make sure the library that you're looking for shows up in this list. If it's not here, then it won't show up in the selection. So you have to click on Add Library Association and then add it. I just want to point out there's a small bug in the UI here. This says cancel. As soon as you add your association, you can hit cancel. It doesn't cancel the operation. We're just changing the semantic of this in the next release. It'll just say done. Okay, back to this. Okay, so that's how we load in our library data, our non-material library data. I'd now like to take a minute to look at loading in material data. So we created the asphalt material library. So we're going to go to our designs. We're going to go to our new flexible design, and I want to be able to load in the asphalt material data that I created as a library. So I'm going to click on structure, and that's going to take me to the structure editor component. And then I will click the edit button under layer selection. And then I'm going to go ahead and click the overwrite checkbox because I want to overwrite the default asphalt concrete here. I'm going to click on the flexible dropdown, and we can see that the library that we created is here. It's called the asphalt 1. And so we just drag that in. And does everyone remember the default air voids value? 7. We change it to 5, and indeed our air voids are at 5. And all of these properties, mechanical properties, AC thermal, or binder information, modulus information, all of that would be automatically pulled in for this layer. And that can be done for any layer in your structure, be it a flexible, subgrade, concrete, PCC, or JPCP. All of those are ready to be imported as libraries and can then be consumed by your design when you're doing your editing. Okay, so let's talk next about the design template. So we're going to go back to our designs page. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this one. We're going to create a new one. I'm going to call it new flexible from template. And under the use template box, should be able to drop that down. I don't see my template here. Give me 1 second. Let me cancel the tenants. See why I can't see our design template. Not showing up. Oh, you know what? I didn't save it. So here's our design template. It's going to be new flexible. I'm going to just change the design life to 25 years. We'll hit save. And since I want to save this as a design template, I can just check this save box right here. Give it a description, demo design template. And we'll hit save. So that's now saved those changes. Okay, now back to the design editor. The designs component, create new design, design from library template 1, or create. And now we can see I have my design template flexible one right here. So I'm going to select that from the drop-down box and hit create. And then we'll go into the editor by clicking on the edit pen. And you can see my design life is no longer the default value. So the idea here is that you can set up all of the entirety of a design file, and then your user comes in and they only have to edit very specific fields, ostensibly. Things like thickness, they might edit the traffic for this particular design, but all the other settings have been created for them and reviewed to ensure that they're correct. And they don't even have to worry about those. Those are all correct now. So they can go straight to structure and maybe play around with the structure, edit the thickness, and then run a couple of designs. So it gets them to be able to the point, it gets you and anybody working with you to the point where you can actually run the designs accurately much faster. So they're very, very powerful tool. Templates are, again, a very powerful tool that allow you to create a mold of the various types of designs at your agency, which your designers can then use as a valuable starting point, which to generate consistent designs. Okay, so that's material libraries. We've gone over that. Okay, some common questions and answers regarding libraries, workspaces, and design templates. Question, if I created a design template library, should I also create the other libraries for traffic, performance criteria, etc., or just use design templates? And the answer is really any combination of libraries and templates are allowed. Libraries are just ways of grouping the various design component data together and saving it for later use in the design editor. It's up to the agency to determine the best path forward for managing their data in the system. We at ARA recommend design templates be used where possible, where they make sense, as they provide the most built-in versatility, but it is certainly not wrong to build specific libraries for more specific use cases. Can I set up my libraries and workspaces to use my library data by default? For example, if I create a new design, can I have libraries that are designated to populate the data in the new design? Not yet. That is one of the very first features that we're going to be working on in FY25. Pretty excited about that, to allow users to just set libraries as default data, and those will automatically be a part of your design as soon as you create it. Again, trying to improve the speed with which users can get to the most important critical engineering decisions when they're working with a design. Can I make it so my users cannot use the system workspace defaults, so that they cannot even select them as an option? Also not yet. Also another high priority work item for FY25. So this will make it so that your users don't even see the system defaults. They can't access the system defaults, and it will require them to use your agency specific default data. What if you already have a bunch of XML files from previous calibrations and designs that you've done in the past? How do you get them into the web application? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is the focus of the second half of the webinar. And I say half, there's not that much left. Let me move forward here. Okay, so how can I get my existing data from the desktop app into the web application? So the primary way to do this is to import the data as XML files. The data that exists in the desktop application exists either as XML files, either as DGPX files or components of a DGPX file, as we've discussed previously, or they are stored in the relational SQL Server or Oracle database. If you are using SQL Server or Oracle, you can use the built-in tools in the desktop application to export your designs. So you just go through the process of exporting those DGPX files or those component libraries to XML files. And at that point, you're at the step where you can import that XML design data into version 3 using the built-in web application tools. So let's see what that looks like. So we're uploading data to Pavement ME Design using the library import tools and verifying that that data is correct by examining the inputs. They're the 2 steps that you want to perform when you're incorporating legacy data into the PMED web app. First, you're going to want to create the libraries into which you can load your various data. That's what we focused on in the first half of the webinar here. That generally means a one-to-one match between your XML files and the libraries that you're going to create in the web application. Although recall from earlier, you can create composite libraries and design templates at your discretion. Newer versions of Pavement of the desktop application and of the web application include properties that have changed over time. The data structure of the DGPX file has had to be modified to account for those newer requirements. Just as an example, the relatively recent work that was done for top-down cracking, the NCHRP 152 project, new properties were added to the design as a part of that project. When we import that data from older systems, those new or altered properties are ignored by the import process. They're just assigned their C# default values, as I mentioned previously. So it's very important as you bring in your legacy DGPX files and component files, check each parameter because it's the library file. So it's sort of the base or the template that's going to be used, when you're working or when your folks are working with designs later on. So we want to make sure that those match your expectations and the numbers are correct. So double and triple check imported library data, and we can assist your agency with that process. We both manually and automatically. We're going to describe that a little later in the webinar. Okay, so what does this process look like? We're going to import a sample traffic XML library and a sample calibration factors library. I've made some small changes to those. Lastly, we're going to look at how to create a design template library from an existing DGPX file. So the first thing we're going to do is create this sample traffic XML file and calibration XML file. I think I already have those created for the demo. So let me go to the library. So I'm going to go to tenants, PMED test tenant, default libraries, and then I'm going to go to our traffic calibration data composite library and select it. And then inside of here, I'm going to go to the traffic action menu item. Now what I want to do is import an existing XML library. So I'm going to go to the ellipsis, traffic, import traffic, upload traffic XML. And you can see I've got one defined here. And basically you just select the XML file that matches the component type. So mine is traffic. So I'm going to grab that one. And you can see that one actually has a different AADTT. That one has 2000. So I've now imported that traffic XML file that came from, the desktop application of Pavement ME Design. And so my next step is to verify these properties, make sure this data looks correct, make sure all of the data, including things like axle distribution and vehicle class distribution, make sure it all looks correct. And then I hit save. And again, we're going to save this as a traffic library and as a calibration library, composite library. So we'll hit save. And those changes have now been saved. And that's it. That's all it takes to import the XML data into your system. And the manual work is to ensure that the data is correct once it's been uploaded. Most of the time it will be. And early in FY25, we're developing a tool, a migration log tool, that if the program bumps into a property that is not recognized, it will put that in a log, and then the user will be able to view that log, and then basically it'll tell you exactly what properties were imported using C# defaults instead of actual data. Okay, let me catch up in my slides. Okay, we were going to do the calibration import. I'm going to skip that because we're running a little short on time. So we're going to head back to, okay, that uploads that. We're gonna move on to what we've covered so far. As a recap, what's this? Okay, so what we've covered so far: how to recognize different types of PMED component XML data as libraries. We've reviewed the difference and interaction between libraries, workspaces, and users in Pavement ME Design. We've reviewed how to set up workspaces and associate them with libraries and users. We talked about how to use library data in designs. We talked about how to organize XML data within libraries via composite libraries and design templates. We talked about how to import XML data and review it in the web application. And we've reviewed how to transition library data from the desktop application into the web application. Okay, so looking forward in FY25, we have several features that we're going to be implementing related to libraries. So I wanted to go over those with everybody. These are high priority items. There's some of the first ones that we're going to be doing in FY25. So they'll be completed early on sometime in the July-August timeframe. So we're looking at default provider libraries. Default provider libraries that'll allow you to be able to mark a library as a default provider. That means whenever a new design is created and when that particular design strategy is selected, if it's applicable, those default provider libraries will be used to populate the design data in lieu of the system defaults. Again, just trying to speed up that process of having to load library data, just to allow you to automate that process. The XML upload migration report I discussed previously. The library sharing and viewing component. This feature will allow tenant admins to share their libraries with other tenants. Tenants who want to share a library will basically allow other tenants to make copies of their library within the person that they're sharing with within that other person's tenant. The feature is also going to include a user selectable refresh feature that'll automatically refresh a shared library, the user's tenant, with the data from the sharing tenant. For now, users can share library data the usual way by sending library XML file exports to other users. But we think this will be advantageous for DOTs that work with consultants. You know, if that particular consultant isn't in the DOT's tenant, but the DOT has library data they want the consultant to use, this library sharing feature will allow that consultant to guarantee that they're using the exact same data that the DOT is using within their tenant. Tenant admin control over workspaces. Tenant admins are going to be able to control which workspaces users can see and access, specifically the system default workspace. Tenant admins should also be able to assign a default workspace for each user in their tenant. And then user definable library metadata. So in the design editor component, there's an identifiers tab on almost all the various components of the design. So if we go here to like traffic, you can see identifiers. And part of this work's already finished, but within the library itself, we want you to be able to do the same thing. So if we go to default libraries here, inside of this, and we go to traffic, the identifiers are here. And this will be saved with the library. But in addition to this, what this task is referring to is metadata for these libraries. So basically at this level, if you want some sort of a metadata that you want to associate with this particular composite library, you'd be able to add that here. Okay, and with that, we're going to go on to our last two poll questions. Ben, if you want to open those up, probably for 90 seconds for this one. And Ben, at your discretion, I think you can probably see the results coming in. If we need to add a little bit more time for this one, just let me know.
Will do. We're about 50% answered. We're at 90 seconds, but I'm going to give it a little bit longer so folks can continue to answer the poll questions.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, Chad, you can keep going. I'm going to end the poll. We're at 99% answered.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, so upcoming webinars I want to spend just a couple slides, go over what's coming up in FY25, start putting things on calendars. So we have several, 4 webinars planned for FY25 using the new CIR FDR design strategies in Pavement ME Design, damage dynamic modulus, and MSCR overview. Those are 2 new features that have been implemented in FY24. Both of those will be released prior to July 1st, likely within the next 5 to 10 days here. We'll also have a webinar on the local calibration guide, and then we're also going to do a BCT back calculation tool workshop. And just as a reminder, the slides, the questions and answers, and the recording, we're going to post those on me-design.com. If you have any suggestions for webinar topics for FY25, please send those in to pavementmedesign@aara.com, and we'll get those reviewed. We're happy to take suggestions for future webinars. One more upcoming event for FY25, I really strongly encourage folks to attend the PMED user group meeting September 4th through 5th. That'll be in Atlanta, Georgia. AASHTOWare will be sending out more information on that as we get closer to the date. The last user group meeting was excellent. We had a lot of positive feedback. We had a lot of really good participation, a lot of good questions. And from it, the development team was able to draw a lot of conclusions on features that needed to be implemented, and assigning appropriate priority to those features. And again, that's all from you guys, from the users. So definitely come to the user group meeting, make your voice heard, and have a good time with us as we go through the application and design challenges at the meeting.
I've posted for everybody in the chat feature. Hopefully you can see that at the bottom. There's a CVent registration site. You're able to register for the conference now. You can also Google PMED 2024. You can find the Pavement User Group site to register. If you work for an agency and you're licensing, check out the travel reimbursement tab so that you can get your registration and travel to and from the group covered. Additionally, try to register by the end of July. This year, we're doing a registration gift of a fleece jacket with the Pavement ME Design logo on it. So head over there and register.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, so the Q&A, we've had a few questions. It looks like they've been answered, but I'm going to go through them here. The first question, can you change from a composite library to a single library once you have defined it as a composite library? Yes. When you're in that save screen, just uncheck the box that you have marked that will be automatically checked as save because it was previously, and then that part of the library will revert back to the default values. The video will be posted on the PMED website. Okay, and I think that's it. There was one other question that says, when you cannot see the import, they try reducing the screen size. Send an email to pavementmedesign@aara.com if you have any issues accessing the context menus. So from the ellipsis button, or from wherever, if you're not able to see them or there's some issue, we need to fix that. So send that issue in with a screenshot of the issue that you're having, and we'll get that resolved relatively quickly. I think that's it for Q&A. If you have further questions, don't hesitate to send those in to pavementmedesign@aara.com. We'll be happy to help. With that, I turn this back over to Hari to take us out.
Thank you all for joining us today, and we hope you found the information provided helpful and timely. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to any of the AASHTOWare Pavement ME contacts shown in this slide. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thanks.
Thank you.